The cake was already in the oven when my mother walked into the kitchen and said the words that would change everything. "Serafina, we need to cancel your party. Marcus had another episode." My 18th birthday, the milestone I had been planning for months, gone, just like that, because my 22-year-old brother could not handle not being the center of attention for one single day. As I stared at her flower still dusting my hands from decorating, I realized this was not just about a birthday party. This was about 18 years of being second place in my own family. But before we dive into how this family betrayal led to the most shocking discovery of my life, I want to know where you are watching from today. Are you dealing with family drama of your own? If this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will show you that sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up facing consequences we never could have imagined. Trust me, this revenge story gets wild. Growing up in the Henderson household meant living under one unbreakable rule: Marcus comes first. Always. My brother, 4 years older and diagnosed with anxiety and depression, wielded his mental health like a weapon against anyone who dared to take attention away from him. And my parents, especially my mother, Patricia, enabled every single manipulation. When I made honor roll, the celebration dinner was canceled because Marcus felt triggered by academic pressure. When I got accepted to 3 colleges, my mother whispered the news so Marcus would not overhear and feel bad about dropping out twice. When I landed my first job at 16, I was forbidden from talking about it at home because work stress gave Marcus panic attacks. But the birthday incident was different. This time, I had evidence of just how calculated his behavior really was. 3 days before my party, I had accidentally seen his browser history while borrowing his laptop for a school project. Reddit threads about how to fake panic attacks convincingly. YouTube videos titled "Emotional Manipulation Techniques That Always Work." Google searches for how to make parents choose you over siblings. My stomach had twisted as I screenshot everything, not quite believing what I was seeing. Marcus was not having episodes. He was performing them. Every tear, every hyperventilation session, every dramatic collapse that sent our parents into protective overdrive was carefully orchestrated theater designed to maintain his position as the family's primary concern. The morning of my birthday, I watched him prepare. He had been perfectly fine, even humming while making breakfast. But the moment our parents started hanging decorations in the backyard, his demeanor shifted. First came the heavy sighs, then the dramatic slumping in chairs. By noon, he was pacing and muttering about feeling overwhelmed by all the chaos. When my mother approached me with her cancellation announcement, I could see Marcus lurking in the hallway, watching her deliver the news with barely concealed satisfaction. That was when something inside me snapped. Not just anger, but a cold, calculating rage that felt surprisingly familiar. Maybe I had learned more from watching him than I realized. "I understand, Mom," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. "Family comes first, right?" She looked relieved, probably expecting another one of my tearful acceptance speeches. She had no idea I was already planning my exit strategy. That night, while my family slept soundly, believing they had successfully managed another Marcus crisis, I transferred my savings account to a new bank, applied for emergency financial aid at my college, and started researching apartments near campus. I had been planning to live at home my first year to save money. Not anymore. But more importantly, I created a group chat with my cousins Emma and Jake, my grandmother Dorothy, and my aunt Sarah. I titled it "The Real Marcus Files" and sent them every screenshot I had taken from his browser history. The responses were immediate and explosive. Emma: "Holy shit, Sarah, this explains everything." Jake: I knew something was off about him. Remember Christmas 2 years ago? Grandma Dorothy. That manipulative little snake. I have been watching this for years. Aunt Sarah. Your mother needs to see this. We all do. This stops now. My phone buzzed with message after message as family members connected dots they had been ignoring for years. Stories poured in about Marcus's convenient episodes that always seemed to coincide with other people's good news. About the time he had a panic attack during Emma's wedding preparation. About how he monopolized every family gathering with his dramatic needs. But it was my grandmother's next message that changed everything. Serafina, there's something else you need to know about your trust fund. Meet me tomorrow. Come alone. Trust fund. I had never heard anything about a trust fund. As I sat in my darkened room, surrounded by the ruins of my canceled birthday party, I realized this rabbit hole went much deeper than teenage manipulation and parental favoritism. Money was involved. And in my family, money meant power. The next morning, I told my parents I was spending the day with friends, which was not technically a lie, since my grandmother counted as a friend at this point. As I drove to her house, my mind raced with possibilities. What trust fund? How much money and why had this been kept secret from me? Grandma Dorothy answered the door with a grim expression and immediately ushered me into her study. She pulled out a thick folder from her filing cabinet and set it on the desk between us. Your great-aunt Millicent left education trusts for both you and Marcus when she died 10 years ago. She began, her voice tight with anger. $50,000 each to be accessed at 18 for college expenses. Marcus used his when he turned 18, supposedly for his first attempt at college. My heart raced. $50,000. That was enough to pay for my entire education without student loans. Why am I just learning about this now? Her expression darkened further. Because your parents told me you had decided not to go to college. They said you wanted to take a gap year and work instead. They asked me not to mention the trust because they did not want you to feel pressured to make educational decisions based on money. The room spun around me. Grandma, I have been accepted to 3 colleges. I have been planning my education for years. They lied to you. She nodded grimly. I figured that out when Sarah told me about your acceptance letters. Serafina, your trust fund money is gone. Your parents transferred it to Marcus's account 6 months ago, claiming you had signed papers agreeing to let him use it for a business venture. $50,000 stolen by my own parents to fund whatever my manipulative brother was doing instead of working or going to school. I thought about the new gaming setup in his room. The expensive clothes he somehow afforded without a job, the anxiety that prevented him from working but never seemed to interfere with his social life or spending habits. Do you have proof of the transfer? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Grandma Dorothy opened the folder and handed me a stack of documents, bank statements, transfer records. And there at the bottom of the pile was a signature authorization form. My signature. Except I had never signed anything like that in my life. They had forged my signature. My own parents had committed fraud to steal my inheritance and give it to my brother. The golden child who could do no wrong. The son whose fake mental health crises had trained them to give him anything he wanted. I photographed every document with my phone, my hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. This was not just about birthday parties anymore. This was about theft, fraud, years of financial abuse disguised as family loyalty. What do you want to do about this? My grandmother asked quietly. I looked at her, this woman who had raised 6 children and built a successful business from nothing, who had survived the Depression and 2 wars and never let anyone push her around. I saw myself in her steely expression. I want them to face consequences, I said. Real ones. I want everyone to know what kind of people they really are. She smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Good. because I have been waiting 18 years for someone in this family to grow a backbone. The family meeting that changed everything happened on a Sunday afternoon in late June. I had spent 2 weeks carefully orchestrating this moment, reaching out to every family member, collecting evidence, and building what my Aunt Sarah called an airtight case against the Golden Boy and his enablers. But first, I had to secure my immediate future. Using the documents my grandmother had given me, I walked into the bank where my trust fund had been housed and requested a full investigation into the fraudulent transfer. The bank manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, took one look at the forged signature and immediately flagged the account. "This is clearly not the same handwriting," she said, comparing my real signature to the forgery on the transfer documents. "We will be filing a police report and freezing all related accounts pending investigation. I'm sorry this happened to you, Miss Henderson. This kind of fraud within families is more common than you might think, but that does not make it any less serious." Walking out of that bank, I felt powerful for the first time in 18 years. The law was on my side. The evidence was overwhelming, and my family was about to learn that their quiet, compliant daughter had inherited more than just her grandmother's trust fund. The next step was gathering my allies. My cousin Emma drove down from Portland, bringing her husband and their 2 young children. My cousin Jake flew in from Chicago, rearranging his work schedule because, as he put it, "This is bigger than business." My Aunt Sarah cleared her entire weekend. Even my Uncle Michael, who usually avoided family drama, showed up with a legal pad full of notes. But the most important ally was someone I had never expected: Marcus's ex-girlfriend, Chloe. She had reached out through social media after seeing one of Emma's posts about family accountability. Her message was short but devastating. "I have things you need to know about Marcus. Financial things. Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop downtown, and what she told me made my blood run cold. For the 6 months they had dated, Marcus had been running elaborate financial scams. He had convinced her to let him invest her savings in cryptocurrency, then lost it all gambling. He had taken out credit cards in her name. He had sold her grandmother's jewelry and told her it had been stolen. "The worst part," Chloe said, tears streaming down her face, "is that he would have these panic attacks whenever I tried to confront him about the money. He would hyperventilate and cry and talk about how stress made his anxiety worse. I felt horrible for even bringing it up." I showed her the screenshots of his browser history, the tutorials on faking panic attacks, the manipulation guides. She stared at the evidence in stunned silence. "That bastard," she whispered. "He destroyed my credit, my relationship with my family, my ability to trust anyone, and it was all fake." "Do you want to help me make sure he faces consequences?" I asked. Her smile was fierce. "I thought you would never ask." By Sunday afternoon, my grandmother's living room was packed with people who had been hurt, manipulated, or lied to by Marcus and my parents over the years. Emma and Jake sat on the couch with their own folders of evidence. Aunt Sarah had printed out bank statements showing other suspicious transfers from family accounts. Uncle Michael had consulted with his lawyer friend about the legal implications of the fraud. But it was Chloe's evidence that truly shocked everyone. She had kept meticulous records of Marcus's financial abuse, including recordings of conversations where he admitted to lying about his anxiety to avoid consequences. She had bank statements showing the money he had stolen from her. She had text messages where he bragged about how easy it was to manipulate bleeding heart women who felt sorry for him. "He called our mother a bleeding heart woman," I said, reading one of the texts aloud. He said, and I quote, "Patricia will give me anything if I cry hard enough. It is like having a personal ATM that runs on fake tears." The room fell silent. My Aunt Sarah was crying. My Uncle Michael looked like he wanted to punch something. My grandmother's expression was ice-cold fury. "What is the plan?" Emma asked quietly. I had been thinking about this for days. We confront them together, all of us, with all the evidence, in front of the whole family. What if they deny it? Jake asked. They cannot deny bank records and forged signatures, Uncle Michael said grimly. This is not he said, she said, anymore. This is documented criminal fraud. My grandmother stood up, her spine straight despite her 73 years. I am calling Patricia right now. Family dinner here next Sunday. Everyone will be here. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. She made the call while we all listened. My mother's voice was bright and unsuspecting on the other end of the line. Of course, Mom. We will be there. Should I bring dessert? No. My grandmother said, her voice carefully neutral. Just bring yourselves, and Patricia, make sure Marcus comes. This is important. After she hung up, we spent another hour planning exactly how the confrontation would unfold. Who would speak first? What evidence would be presented when? How to handle Marcus's inevitable fake breakdown? But as we were wrapping up, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Sarah, Grandma says you will be at dinner Sunday. I am so glad you are feeling better about the birthday situation. Family is what matters most. I showed the text to the room, and the anger was palpable. Family is what matters most, Aunt Sarah repeated bitterly. She really believes that even after stealing from her own daughter, she is about to learn what family accountability actually looks like, I said. That night, I lay in bed thinking about how drastically my life had changed in just 2 weeks. I had gone from being the invisible daughter who accepted scraps of attention to someone with a plan, allies, and the evidence to destroy the people who had been destroying me for years. But I was not doing this just for revenge, although that was certainly part of it. I was doing this because other people had been hurt too. Chloe. My cousins who had been manipulated at family gatherings. My grandmother who had been lied to about my college plans. Everyone who had watched Marcus's performances and felt guilty for doubting someone with mental health issues. Mental health was real and serious, but what Marcus had been doing was not mental health. It was calculated abuse disguised as vulnerability, and it was about to be exposed in front of everyone who had enabled it. The week leading up to Sunday dinner felt like the longest of my life. I went through the motions of normal life while internally preparing for war. My parents noticed nothing different about my behavior, which somehow made their upcoming humiliation feel even more deserved. Marcus, meanwhile, seemed almost giddy about the family dinner. He probably thought it would be another opportunity to perform for a sympathetic audience. He had no idea that half the people in that room would be armed with evidence of his crimes. On Saturday night, as I was doing my final preparations, my grandmother called. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" she asked. "I have been ready for this my entire life," I told her. "Good. Because there is one more thing I did not tell you at our meeting. Something I have been saving for the right moment." My heart raced. "What is it?" "Your parents took out a second mortgage on their house 6 months ago. I did not think much of it at the time, but now with everything we know about Marcus's spending..." She paused. "Serafina, I think your trust fund money was just the beginning. I think they have been funding his lifestyle with debt for years. A second mortgage on top of my stolen inheritance. How much money had they given him? How deep were they in debt because of his manipulation?" "We will find out tomorrow," I said grimly, "along with everyone else." Sunday arrived, gray and humid, matching the storm that was about to break over my family. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing a simple blue dress that made me look older, more serious. Today was not about looking pretty. Today was about looking credible. I arrived at my grandmother's house early to help set up, but really I wanted a few minutes to calm my nerves before the confrontation. Emma and Jake were already there along with their spouses and children. The kids had been briefed to play quietly in the backyard while the adults had an important conversation. Aunt Sarah arrived with Uncle Michael and a man I did not recognize. "This is Tom Bradley," she said, introducing the stranger. "He is a family lawyer and a friend. He wanted to be here in case anyone needs legal advice after we present our evidence." My stomach fluttered. Having a lawyer present made this feel official, real. There was no backing down now. Chloe came next, carrying a thick folder and looking nervous but determined. She had been brave enough to contact me to share her story to help expose the person who had nearly destroyed her life. I was not going to let her down. At exactly 5 o'clock, my parents' car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I could see my mother fussing with her hair in the passenger mirror while my father checked something on his phone. Marcus was in the back seat, earbuds in, completely relaxed. They had no idea what was coming. "Places, everyone," my grandmother murmured, and we took our positions around the living room. The evidence folders were stacked on the coffee table. Tom Bradley sat slightly apart from the family notepad ready. Chloe positioned herself where Marcus would be able to see her clearly. My parents walked in with bright smiles, my mother carrying a bottle of wine, and my father looking slightly confused about why everyone was so formally arranged in the living room instead of gathered in the kitchen as usual. Marcus followed behind them, and the moment he saw Chloe, his face went white. But he recovered quickly, slipping on what I now recognized as his anxious but trying to be brave expression. "Chloe," he said, his voice carefully modulated to sound surprised but pleased. "What are you doing here? I thought you were still angry with me." "I am," she said simply. "Extremely angry. We all are." My grandmother stood up, commanding attention without raising her voice. "Patricia, David, Marcus, please sit down. We have some things to discuss." My parents exchanged glances but took seats on the sofa. Marcus remained standing, and I could see him calculating his options. He was probably already planning which family member to target with his manipulation once he figured out what was happening. "Mom, this seems awfully formal," my mother said with a nervous laugh. "What is going on?" "What is going on," my grandmother said calmly, "is that we have discovered some very disturbing things about how certain members of this family have been behaving. Things that involve fraud, theft, and emotional manipulation." Marcus's eyes darted around the room, taking in all the faces staring at him. "I do not understand what you are talking about," he said, but his voice was already taking on that shaky quality he used when he wanted sympathy. Emma leaned forward and picked up the first folder. "We are talking about this," she said, opening it to reveal printouts of Marcus's browser history. "Reddit posts about faking panic attacks, YouTube tutorials on emotional manipulation, Google searches for how to make parents choose you over siblings." The silence was deafening. My mother stared at the documents, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and slowly dawning horror. My father leaned over to read the evidence himself, his jaw tightening with each line. This has to be fake," my mother stammered. "Marcus would never..." "Would never what?" I said, speaking for the first time since they had arrived. "Would never manipulate you, would never lie, would never steal from his own sister." Jake opened the second folder. "This is bank documentation showing that Serafina's $50,000 education trust fund was illegally transferred to Marcus's account using a forged signature." He slid the papers across the coffee table to my parents. My mother picked them up with shaking hands, comparing my real signature to the obvious forgery on the transfer documents. "Patricia," my grandmother said quietly, "you told me Serafina did not want to go to college. You said she had decided to take a gap year and work instead. You asked me not to mention her trust fund because you did not want her to feel pressured by money." My mother's face crumpled. Marcus said, He said you had changed your mind about school. He said you wanted him to invest the money for you, that you trusted him to make it grow. Mom, I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest. I have been planning for college since I was 14. I was accepted to 3 schools. You know this. You helped me fill out applications. She started, then stopped looking at Marcus with an expression I had never seen before. Not protective, not sympathetic, something closer to horror. Marcus was hyperventilating now, but this time, none of us were rushing to comfort him. Chloe opened her folder and pulled out her phone. I recorded some of our conversations, she announced. Before anyone calls me crazy for recording my boyfriend, let me explain that I was trying to document his emotional abuse for my therapist. I had no idea he was running financial scams, too. She hit play on her phone, and Marcus's voice filled the room. You have to understand, baby. I have learned how to work my family. My mom especially. She is such a bleeding heart. I just have to cry a little and talk about my anxiety, and she gives me whatever I want. It is actually kind of pathetic how easy it is. My mother made a sound like she had been physically struck. The recording continued. Serafina is the perfect cover because she never asks for anything. She just accepts whatever scraps of attention we throw her way. So when I need money, I just have an episode during one of her big moments. Mom cancels whatever she has going on and focuses on taking care of me instead. Chloe stopped the recording. There are 6 hours of conversations like that. 6 hours of him bragging about manipulating all of you. 6 hours of him planning his next episode to coincide with important events for other family members. My father finally spoke, his voice hoarse. How much money? Tom Bradley opened his briefcase and pulled out a legal pad. Based on the documentation we have reviewed, Marcus has received approximately $87,000 from various family sources over the past 4 years. This includes Serafina's trust fund, multiple emergency loans from his parents that were never repaid, money taken from his girlfriend's accounts, and what appears to be proceeds from a second mortgage on the family home. My parents turned to stare at Marcus in unison. A second mortgage, my father repeated. Marcus was full-on hyperventilating now, but something about it looked different, performed. When he realized no one was rushing to help him, his breathing suddenly became more controlled. You do not understand, he said desperately. I really do have anxiety. I really do struggle with depression. Just because I looked up some things online does not mean I was faking everything. No, Aunt Sarah said coldly. But stealing $87,000 from your family is not a symptom of anxiety. That is called being a criminal. Uncle Michael leaned forward. The bank has already frozen your accounts pending a fraud investigation. The police have been notified about the forged documents, and Chloe is pressing charges for identity theft and financial abuse. The room erupted. My mother started crying. My father was shouting at Marcus, demanding to know where the money had gone. Marcus was alternating between fake panic attacks and genuine terror as he realized the legal consequences he was facing. But through all the chaos, I felt strangely calm. This was what justice looked like. Messy and painful and long overdue, but finally happening. My grandmother stood up and raised her voice over the shouting. Everyone needs to calm down. We are not done here. She waited for quiet, then continued. Marcus, you have stolen from multiple family members, committed fraud, and emotionally abused everyone in this room for years. Your parents enabled this behavior and participated in the theft of their own daughter's inheritance. This family is broken, and it has been broken for a very long time. She turned to me. Serafina, you have choices to make. You can file charges against your parents as well as your brother. You can pursue civil litigation to recover your stolen money. You can cut contact with all of them and build your own life. The adults in this room will support whatever you decide to do." I looked at my parents, both of them crying now, both of them looking at me like I held their future in my hands. My mother opened her mouth to speak, probably to beg for forgiveness or understanding or another chance. I held up my hand to stop her. "I have already decided," I said. "I have already decided," I said, looking directly at my mother. "I am pressing charges against Marcus for fraud and identity theft. I am pursuing civil litigation to recover every penny he stole from me and from Chloe, and I am moving out of your house tonight." My mother's sob echoed through the room, but I was not finished. "As for you and Dad," I continued, "I have not decided yet whether to include you in the criminal charges. That depends on what you do next." My father found his voice first. "Serafina, we had no idea about the forged signature. When Marcus told us you had agreed to let him invest your trust fund money, we believed him. We thought we were helping facilitate something you wanted." "But you lied to Grandma about my college plans," I said. "You told her I had decided not to go to school. Why would you do that unless you knew something was wrong?" The silence stretched uncomfortably until my mother whispered, "Marcus said you were having doubts about college. He said you had confided in him that you were thinking about taking a gap year but were afraid to disappoint us. He suggested that if we told your grandmother you had changed your mind, it would take the pressure off you to make a quick decision." Uncle Michael snorted. "Patricia, do you hear yourself? You made a major financial decision about your daughter's future based on something your manipulative son claimed she had said in private. You never thought to ask Serafina directly." My mother looked stricken, but before she could respond, something unexpected happened. Jake, who had been quietly taking notes throughout the confrontation, suddenly stood up. "I need to say something," he announced, his voice shaking slightly. "About the second mortgage." All eyes turned to him, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Jake looked nervous, guilty even. He was wringing his hands and would not make eye contact with anyone. "Jake, what is it?" Emma asked, concern evident in her voice. He started, then stopped, took a deep breath, and tried again. "I co-signed for the second mortgage. Marcus came to me 6 months ago, said your parents needed emergency money for home repairs, but their credit was maxed out from his previous medical expenses. He showed me estimates from contractors, talked about roof damage and foundation problems. I felt bad for Patricia and David, so I agreed to co-sign." The room exploded in angry voices, but I felt like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Jake, my cousin Jake, who had flown in from Chicago to support me, who had helped gather evidence against Marcus, who had been sitting in this room acting like our ally while hiding the fact that he had enabled the theft of my inheritance money. "You co-signed a loan that funded Marcus's theft." Aunt Sarah's voice was ice cold. "Jake, how could you be so stupid?" "I did not know," Jake protested. "I thought it was legitimate. Marcus showed me documentation, contractor estimates, photos of damage to the house. It all looked real." "Did you verify any of it?" Tom Bradley asked sharply. "Did you call the contractors, check with Patricia and David directly?" Jake's face went red. "Marcus said they were embarrassed about needing help and did not want the whole family to know about their financial problems. He begged me not to mention it to anyone." I stared at my cousin, this man I had trusted who had seemed so angry on my behalf just hours earlier. "Jake, where did you think the money was going if it was supposedly for home repairs? Did you track the payments? Did you ask to see the completed work?" He faltered, looking around the room at all the disappointed faces. "I trusted family. I thought I was helping." Emma stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You trusted Marcus over the rest of us. You enabled his theft. And then you came here today acting like you were on our side." "I am on your side," Jake insisted. When I saw all the evidence about his manipulation, I realized I had been used too. I am a victim here, just like everyone else. No, I said quietly, and the room fell silent. You are not a victim, Jake. You are an accomplice. The words hung heavy in the air. Jake's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought he might start crying, but then his expression hardened. You know what? He said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. Maybe I should not have co-signed that loan, but at least I was trying to help family. At least I was not plotting this elaborate revenge scheme like some kind of sociopath. The insult hit like a physical blow. Several people in the room gasped, and Emma moved closer to me protectively. Revenge scheme. I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. Come on, Sarah. You have been planning this for weeks. Gathering evidence, recording conversations, building your little alliance. This whole thing feels calculated and manipulative. Maybe you learned more from Marcus than you want to admit. The accusation was so shocking, so completely wrong that for a moment I could not speak. Then Uncle Michael stood up, his face flushed with anger. Jacob Henderson, you are out of line. Your cousin discovered that her inheritance had been stolen and her brother was running elaborate financial scams. She had every right to gather evidence and seek justice. What did you expect her to do? Keep quiet and let it continue. I expected her to handle it like family, Jake shot back. Talk to her parents privately, work it out internally, not drag everyone into this public humiliation circus. Handle it like family. Chloe spoke up, her voice shaking with rage. The way your family handled Marcus stealing my life savings, the way they handled him destroying my credit, the way they handled years of emotional abuse disguised as mental health struggles. Jake turned on her. You are not even family. Why are you here? Because unlike you, Chloe said, standing up to face him, I actually want to stop Marcus from hurting more people. While you were enabling his theft, I was documenting his abuse so other victims would have evidence. Jake's facade was crumbling, and I could see the real reason for his defensive anger. He was scared of being held legally responsible for co-signing a fraudulent loan, scared of his wife finding out he had been financially reckless, scared of facing consequences for his poor judgment. How much money are you on the hook for with that second mortgage? I asked quietly. He went pale. What do you mean? The co-signer is equally responsible for loan repayment if the primary borrowers default. My parents have no way to repay that money now that Marcus's crimes are being exposed. Their credit will be destroyed. The bank will come after you for the full amount. Tom Bradley nodded grimly. She is right. Co-signing means you guaranteed the debt. If Patricia and David cannot pay, you are legally obligated to cover the entire loan balance. How much, Jake? Emma demanded. $45,000, he whispered. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. $45,000, more than many people made in a year. Money that Jake apparently did not have based on the panic spreading across his face. That is why you are really here, I realized aloud. Not to support me or seek justice for the family. You are here because you need Marcus to be held responsible, so you are not stuck paying for his crimes. Jake's shoulders sagged in defeat. My wife does not know about the co-signing. If she finds out I put our kids' college funds at risk, he looked around the room desperately. I cannot afford to pay back $45,000. It would destroy my family. It would destroy your family, Aunt Sarah repeated coldly. The same way Marcus's schemes destroyed Chloe's finances and Seraphina's trust fund and Patricia and David's credit. But somehow, when it affects you personally, it becomes a crisis. That is not fair, Jake protested weakly. None of this is fair, I said, standing up. It was not fair when Marcus stole my birthday. It was not fair when he stole my trust fund. It was not fair when he abused Chloe financially and emotionally. And it is not fair that you enabled him and then came here pretending to be my ally when you were really just trying to save yourself. I looked around the room at the faces of my family members, my parents still crying and probably realizing the full scope of their financial ruin. Marcus, who had given up on his fake panic attacks and was just sitting silently calculating his next move. Jake, whose betrayal hurt almost as much as my parents' theft because I had trusted him. "You know what?" I said finally. "I am done with all of you." Emma started to protest. "Sarah, I had nothing to do with—" "I know," I cut her off gently. "You and Sarah and Uncle Michael and Grandma, you are not the problem. But this family is toxic. It has been toxic for years, and I am not going to spend another minute trying to fix people who do not want to be fixed." I turned to Tom Bradley. "I want to pursue criminal charges against Marcus for fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. I want to file civil suits to recover my stolen money, and I want to explore whether Jake can be held legally responsible as an accessory to fraud for knowingly facilitating the theft of my trust fund." Jake's face went white. "Sarah, please. I really did not know—" "You did not know because you did not want to know," I interrupted. "You saw what you wanted to see because it was convenient, just like everyone else in this family." I picked up my purse and headed toward the door. "Grandma, thank you for believing in me and helping me find the truth. Emma, Sarah, Michael, thank you for standing with me today. Chloe, thank you for being braver than any of them." "Where are you going?" my mother called after me. "Anywhere but here," I said without turning around. "I have a life to build, and I am not going to let any of you destroy it." As I walked out of my grandmother's house, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Shouting voices, accusations, the sound of chairs scraping as people stood up. My phone was already buzzing with text messages, probably from Jake, begging for forgiveness, or my parents demanding I come back and work this out as a family. I turned off my phone and kept walking. I had said everything I needed to say. Now it was time to let the legal system handle the rest. 3 weeks later, I was living in a small studio apartment near campus, working double shifts at a local restaurant to pay for rent and groceries while I waited for my legal cases to progress. The isolation was difficult, but it was peaceful in a way I had never experienced before. No one was monitoring my moods to make sure I was not overshadowing Marcus. No one was canceling my plans to manage someone else's fake crisis. For the first time in my life, my emotions and experiences belonged entirely to me. The legal proceedings were moving faster than I had expected, largely thanks to Tom Bradley's connections and the overwhelming evidence we had compiled. Marcus had been formally charged with fraud, identity theft, and financial elder abuse for stealing money from my grandmother's accounts as well. Jake was under investigation for his role in the second mortgage fraud. My parents were cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges, which mostly meant they were throwing Marcus under the bus to save themselves. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Marcus himself. I was studying for my placement exams when Tom Bradley called with news that changed everything. "Serafina, you need to sit down for this," he said, his voice barely containing excitement. "Marcus just confessed to everything, and I mean everything." "What do you mean everything?" I asked, setting down my textbook. "The manipulation, the fake panic attacks, the financial fraud, the forged signatures. But that is not the best part. He also confessed to crimes we did not even know about. Identity theft involving at least 6 other victims. Insurance fraud, tax evasion, credit card fraud using information he stole from family members and friends." My head spun as I tried to process this information. Why would he confess to crimes we could not prove? Because his new cellmate is a federal informant and Marcus thought he was bragging to another criminal about how clever his schemes were. Every word was recorded. When the prosecutors played the recordings for him this morning, he realized his public defender had been right about taking a plea deal. I sat down hard on my second-hand couch. How many people did he hurt? We are still counting, but Serafina, the restitution amount is going to be substantial. Between what he stole from you, Chloe, your parents, and the other victims, we are looking at over $200,000 in documented theft. $200,000. The number was staggering. Marcus had not just been manipulating our family. He had been running a sophisticated criminal enterprise using his fake mental health struggles as cover. What does this mean for recovering my money? I asked. Well, that is where things get interesting. The federal prosecutors are seizing all of Marcus's assets, including a savings account we did not know existed. Apparently, he was not spending all the money he stole. He was hoarding most of it. Hoarding it for what? According to his confession, he was planning to disappear once he turned 25 and gained access to a larger trust fund from your great-uncle's estate. He was going to fake his own death, assume a new identity, and start over somewhere else with all the money he had stolen over the years. The audacity of it took my breath away. Marcus had not just been stealing money for immediate gratification. He had been planning to destroy our entire family financially and then vanish, leaving us to deal with the debt and consequences of his crimes. Tom, how much money did they find in his accounts? $137,000, plus some cryptocurrency investments that have appreciated significantly. Your recovery chances are very good. I started crying, then not from sadness, but from relief, so overwhelming it felt like physical pain leaving my body. For weeks, I had been working 16-hour days and eating ramen noodles, trying to scrape together enough money for college while wondering if I would ever see my stolen inheritance again. Now, there was hope. There is more, Tom continued. Jake's situation has taken an interesting turn as well. I wiped my eyes and tried to focus. What kind of turn? The prosecutors reviewed all the documentation from the second mortgage fraud, including Jake's communications with Marcus. They found text messages that suggest Jake knew more about the true purpose of the loan than he admitted to your family. What kind of text messages? Messages where Jake asks Marcus about keeping the family in the dark about this arrangement. Messages where he refers to the loan as an investment opportunity, rather than emergency home repair money. Messages where he asks for a percentage of the returns once Marcus's business ventures start paying off. My stomach dropped. Jake was not just a gullible co-signer. He was a knowing participant. It looks that way. The prosecutors think they can prove Jake knew the loan money was going to fund Marcus's illegal activities, which makes him an accessory to fraud. I thought about Jake sitting in my grandmother's living room acting outraged about Marcus's manipulation while hiding his own complicity, his defensive anger when I had gathered evidence, his accusation that I was being manipulative for seeking justice. He knew, I said quietly. The whole time he knew what Marcus was doing and he profited from it. The text messages suggest he was expecting a cut of the proceeds from Marcus's various schemes. When Marcus got arrested and the money got frozen, Jake realized he was going to be left holding the bag for the loan payments. That is why he came to the family meeting. Not to support me, but to make sure Marcus got prosecuted so Jake would not be solely responsible for the debt. Exactly. And now he is looking at potential criminal charges himself. I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication because my instincts about Jake's betrayal had been correct. Sadness because it meant another family relationship was irreparably damaged. Tom, what happens next? Marcus will be sentenced within the next month. He is looking at 3 to 5 years in federal prison plus restitution payments that will probably take him the rest of his life to complete. Jake will likely face charges within the next few weeks. Your parents will probably get probation and community service in exchange for their cooperation. And my money? You should have your trust fund returned plus interest and damages within 60 days. The court has also ordered additional compensation for the emotional distress and educational delays caused by the theft. After I hung up with Tom, I sat in my tiny apartment and tried to process everything that had happened. 3 weeks ago, I had been a powerless teenager whose family treated her like an inconvenience. Now I was an independent adult with a legal team, a growing support network, and the promise of justice for years of abuse and theft. But the most important change was not external. It was the voice in my head that had finally stopped making excuses for other people's bad behavior. The voice that had learned to say, "This is not acceptable," instead of, "Maybe I am being too sensitive." The voice that had discovered the difference between family loyalty and enabling abuse. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Emma. I got your new number from Grandma. Jake has been calling everyone trying to get support for his legal situation. He is claiming you manipulated the evidence against him, wanted you to know that nobody is buying his story. We all see who he really is now." I typed back, "Thank you for telling me. How is everyone doing?" Angry, embarrassed. Aunt Patricia has been calling Mom crying every day. Uncle David moved out of their house temporarily. Everyone is finally seeing the family dynamics clearly for the first time. What about Jake's wife and kids? She filed for divorce yesterday. Found out about the co-signing when the prosecutors contacted her for an interview. She is furious that he put their kids' future at risk for Marcus's schemes. I felt bad for Jake's children, innocent victims of their father's poor judgment and greed. But I also felt a grim satisfaction that actions were finally having consequences. For too many years, the adults in my family had made terrible decisions without facing any real repercussions. "Emma, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How long did you know that Marcus was manipulating everyone? Really?" There was a long pause before she responded. "Years. I think we all knew something was wrong, but it was easier to go along with it than to confront the truth. I am ashamed of that now." "Why did you finally decide to help me?" "Because watching him steal your birthday party was the last straw, and because you reminded me of myself at your age before I learned to stand up for myself. You deserved better from all of us." I stared at her message for a long time before responding. "Thank you for being honest, and thank you for standing with me when it mattered." "Always. Families should protect each other, not enable abuse." That night, I called Chloe to update her on Marcus's confession and the money recovery situation. She was ecstatic about the prospect of getting her savings back, but more importantly, she was relieved to know that Marcus would face real consequences for his crimes. "Sarah, I have been thinking about something," she said toward the end of our conversation. "When this legal stuff is all settled, would you want to start some kind of support group for people who have been financially abused by family members? I feel like there are probably a lot of people out there dealing with similar situations." The idea intrigued me. What would that look like? Maybe just a safe space for people to share their stories and get advice about legal options and emotional recovery. I have been doing research, and financial abuse within families is way more common than people think. But victims often do not know they have legal recourse. I like that idea. We could call it something like blood money recovery or family financial justice. Yes, we both learned so much about the legal system and evidence gathering through this process. We could help other people navigate similar situations. After we hung up, I felt energized in a way I had not experienced since before my canceled birthday party. Not only was I recovering from my own trauma and theft, but I might be able to help other people escape similar situations. I opened my laptop and started researching financial abuse support resources. Chloe was right. There were thousands of people dealing with family members who stole money, forged signatures, manipulated emotions, and used fake mental health crises to avoid consequences. but most of the resources focused on spousal abuse or elder abuse. There was very little support for adult children who had been financially abused by siblings or parents. We could fill that gap. We could create something that would help people recognize manipulation tactics, gather legal evidence, build support networks, and pursue justice. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt excited about my future. Not just relieved or hopeful, but genuinely excited about the possibilities ahead of me. 6 months later, I was sitting in a courthouse watching Marcus get sentenced to 4 years in federal prison when my phone buzzed with a text from my bank. Deposit successful. Account balance $73, $847. My trust fund money. Finally returned plus interest and additional damages awarded by the court. As I watched my brother in his orange jumpsuit being led away in handcuffs, I felt something I had never experienced before, complete peace with my decision to seek justice. The courtroom was nearly empty. My parents had not come to the sentencing claiming it would be too emotional to watch their son go to prison. Jake was serving his own 6-month sentence for fraud conspiracy, so he was absent as well. The only family members present were my grandmother Emma and Aunt Sarah. Chloe sat beside me holding my hand as the judge delivered the final ruling on our cases. This concludes the matter of People versus Marcus Henderson, the judge announced. The defendant will serve 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. Restitution in the amount of $214,000 will be paid to the victims according to the schedule outlined in the sentencing documents. As we walked out of the courthouse, my grandmother put her arm around my shoulders. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like I can finally breathe," I said honestly. For the first time in my life, I feel like my voice mattered. Like the truth mattered more than keeping peace in the family. Emma nodded. "I have been thinking a lot about that lately, about how we all knew Marcus was manipulative, but we went along with it because confronting the truth felt too hard." "The truth is always hard," my grandmother said, "but lies are harder. They eat away at everything good until there is nothing left but resentment and secrets." Over dinner that night, we talked about the future. My parents had lost their house to foreclosure and were living in a small apartment, both working multiple jobs to pay off the remaining debt from Marcus's schemes. They had sent a letter of apology through Tom Bradley, asking if I would consider family counseling once I was ready. "Are you?" Aunt Sarah asked. "Ready to rebuild a relationship with them?" I considered the question seriously. "Maybe someday, but not yet." They made choices that hurt me deeply, and choosing to protect Marcus over believing me was not a mistake. It was a pattern that went on for years. "What about Marcus?" Emma asked quietly. "When he gets out of prison?" "Marcus is dead to me," I said without hesitation. "The brother I thought I knew never existed. He was just a character Marcus played to manipulate everyone around him." Chloe squeezed my hand. "Speaking of the future, tell them about our project." I smiled, feeling excited to share our news. "Chloe and I have been working on something called the Family Financial Justice Network. We are creating a support system for people who have been financially abused by family members." "How does it work?" my grandmother asked. "We connect victims with legal resources, help them document evidence, and provide emotional support during the process of seeking justice. We also educate people about manipulation tactics so they can recognize abuse earlier. We have already helped 12 families in the past 3 months," Chloe added proudly. "The demand is incredible. Apparently, family financial abuse is way more common than anyone talks about." Aunt Sarah leaned forward with interest. "What kinds of cases are you seeing?" "Everything," I said. "Parents stealing from children's college funds, siblings forging signatures on loans, adult children draining elderly parents' retirement accounts." The techniques Marcus used are not unique. They are a playbook that gets passed around in online forums. The hardest part for most people is accepting that someone they love has been intentionally hurting them, Chloe explained. They want to believe it was a misunderstanding or that their family member will change if they just give them another chance. Emma shook her head sadly. That sounds familiar. I spent years making excuses for Marcus's behavior because I could not accept that he was choosing to hurt people. That is why the support network is so important, I said. It helps people trust their instincts and stop gaslighting themselves. My grandmother smiled proudly. You girls are doing important work. I am proud of how you turned your pain into purpose. After dinner, as we were walking to our cars, Emma pulled me aside. Sarah, there is something I want you to know. Jake reached out to me from prison last week. He wanted me to give you a message. I tensed up. What kind of message? He wanted to apologize. For real this time, not the manipulation he tried at the family meeting. He said prison has given him time to think about his choices, and he realizes he was motivated by greed, not family loyalty. What did you tell him? I told him that if he wants to apologize to you, he needs to do it himself when he gets out, and that an apology does not erase consequences. I nodded. I am glad he is taking responsibility, but you are right. Sorry does not undo the damage he helped cause. He also wanted you to know that he is testifying against some other people who were involved in financial schemes with Marcus, people we do not even know about yet. This surprised me. There were others. Apparently, Marcus was part of a larger network of people who target families with trust funds and inheritance money. Jake is cooperating with federal investigators to expose the whole operation. I felt a chill run down my spine. How many families has this network hurt? They do not know yet, but Jake thinks it could be dozens. As I drove home that night, I thought about all the other families out there who might be dealing with what we had gone through. Children whose siblings were stealing their futures. Parents whose trust was being exploited by their own kids. Elderly family members being manipulated out of their life savings. The Family Financial Justice Network was not just a project anymore. It was a mission. When I got back to my apartment, I found an email waiting from a woman named Rebecca in Arizona. I saw your website, and I think my daughter is doing what your brother did to your family. She claims to have anxiety that prevents her from working, but she somehow always has money for expensive clothes and vacations. My husband and I have given her over $30,000 in the past 2 years for emergencies that never seem to get resolved. Can you help me figure out if I am being manipulated? I spent the next hour on a video call with Rebecca, helping her recognize the patterns of manipulation that had controlled my family for years. By the end of our conversation, she was crying with relief. I thought I was going crazy, she said. Everyone keeps telling me I should be supportive of my daughter's mental health struggles, but nothing about her behavior made sense. Trust your instincts, I told her, and start documenting everything. Keep records of money you give her, reasons she provides, and outcomes of those situations. The pattern will become clear very quickly. After we hung up, I updated our case files. Rebecca would be number 13. 13 families in 3 months who had reached out for help escaping financial abuse by their own relatives. I opened my laptop and started working on our next blog post, When Mental Health Becomes a Weapon, Recognizing Manipulative Behavior in Family Members. As I wrote, I thought about my 18th birthday party that never happened. About the cake that burned in the oven while my mother delivered the news that Marcus's needs came first. Again. That canceled party had been the catalyst for everything that followed. The investigation that exposed years of theft and manipulation, the legal battles that delivered real consequences, the support network that was now helping other families escape similar abuse. In a strange way, I was grateful that my party had been canceled. Not because I enjoyed being hurt, but because it finally forced me to see the truth about my family dynamics. It pushed me to stop accepting unacceptable behavior and start demanding justice. My phone rang, interrupting my writing. It was Chloe. "Sarah, you are never going to believe this. I just got off the phone with a prosecutor in Nevada. They want us to consult on a case involving a family theft ring that sounds exactly like what Marcus was doing." "Really?" A 25-year-old man has been stealing from his parents and grandparents for years using fake medical emergencies and manipulative panic attacks. They found our website and want our help understanding the psychological manipulation tactics. I smiled, feeling that familiar excitement about our work. "When do they want to talk?" "Tomorrow morning. Are you free?" I am always free to help stop someone like Marcus. As we planned the consultation call, I realized something profound had shifted in my life. I was no longer defined by what had been done to me. I was defined by what I was doing to prevent it from happening to others. The girl who had quietly accepted canceled birthday parties and stolen trust funds was gone. In her place was a woman who understood that real family loyalty meant protecting each other from harm, not enabling abuse. Real love meant holding people accountable for their actions, not making excuses for their cruelty. Looking back now, I could see that my family had been teaching me valuable lessons all along, just not the ones they intended. They taught me that being related to someone does not give them the right to hurt you. They taught me that keeping peace is not worth sacrificing justice. They taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone's destructive behavior. Most importantly, they taught me that chosen family can be stronger than blood family. The people sitting in that courthouse today supporting me through Marcus's sentencing were my real family. Emma, who had found her courage and started standing up to enablers in her own life. Aunt Sarah and Uncle Michael, who had prioritized truth over comfort. My grandmother, who had waited 73 years to see real accountability in her family. Chloe, who had turned her trauma into advocacy for other victims. These were the people who celebrated my successes without feeling threatened, who supported my goals without sabotage, who loved me enough to tell me hard truths and stand with me through difficult battles. They were proof that family is not just about genetics. It is about choice, commitment, and mutual respect. As I finished writing the blog post, I included a section that felt particularly important. To anyone reading this who is questioning their own family dynamics, trust your instincts. If you feel like you are walking on eggshells to avoid setting off someone's episodes, if your achievements are consistently overshadowed by someone else's crises, if you find yourself making excuses for behavior that hurts you, you deserve better. You deserve to be heard, believed, and protected. I hit publish and watched as the post went live on our website. Within minutes, comments started appearing from people who recognized their own experiences in my words. People who felt less alone knowing that others had survived similar abuse. People who were ready to stop enabling and start seeking justice. Have you ever experienced financial manipulation from a family member who used mental health claims to avoid consequences? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below because your voice matters and your experience could help someone else recognize manipulation in their own life. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about family accountability and financial justice. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear these lessons about setting boundaries and demanding respect from the people who claim to love you. Thank you for joining me on this journey from victim to advocate. Remember that seeking justice is not revenge, it is self-respect. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is refusing to enable their worst behaviors. Until next time, keep fighting for your worth and never apologize for demanding the treatment you deserve.